When we started BC2, I said we're going to allocate overhead cost using a cost driver. So let's say we use a volume based cost driver like direct labor hours. So all factory overheads, they are allocated based on that cost driver. So as and when workers put in the hours for production, as and when direct labor hours are put into production, we allocate the overhead costs. Overhead costs like factory rent, factory utilities, machine setup, maintenance. So we used a single cost driver, and for all overhead costs, that single cost driver was applicable. So let's say that single cost driver that we used was direct labor hours. Now let us look at a manufacturing entity which has got two product lines. So let me try to draw this manufacturing entity's factory out here. So this is their factory and they've got two product lines. The first product line, they're doing pens. So they manufacture all these colorful pens. So they've got a molding machine. So this is their machinery. So after the pens are molded, then they have a lot of workers working in their assembly department, putting the pens together. So they put the barrels, the lids which are molded along with the refills, put it together, pack it, seal it, ready to be shipped. So you have a lot of workers working in here, taking care of the assembly. So this is the working table. So again, more workers. Few more workers out here. They have another department, let's say. So this one was pens. They have another department where we again use similar molding machines and they mold water bottles. So they don't fill the water in the bottles, they just mold the bottles, send it to the mineral water company which fills in water, seals it, sends it. So they are only taking care of production of these empty bottles. They just mold it, they do nothing else. They have a lot of machines doing it, it's pretty much automated. So they've got a lot of molding machines doing the molding of those bottles. So let's say they've got 4 machines out here. So you have machine, machine, machine and machine. And all these are pretty automated. So they just have one guy, one worker taking care of the operation of one machine. So they've got 4 workers for these 4 machines. They don't do any assembly in this bottles product line. Now let us say we are paying rent for the entire factory premises. That's factory rent. It's an overhead cost. Now you're going to allocate that factory rent between the bottles product line and the pens product line. Would you want to do it by using direct labor hours? Think about it. The pens product line, it's employing a lot of workers. It'll naturally have more direct labor hours. The bottles product line, they just have a very few workers. So if you allocate factory rent using direct labor hours, the pens product line would get more of the factory rent and the bottles product line would get less of it. Even though the bottles product line seems to be using a lot of the factory space, the pens product line is not even using a third of the factory space. So instead of using direct labor hours as a cost driver, how about we use square footage of facilities as a cost driver? So the more square footage a product line uses, the more factory rent gets allocated to it. So let's say the bottles unit is using 2/3 of the space. So they're going to be getting 2/3 of the factory rent. Pens, they're using 1/3 of the space, little space there. So they're going to be getting 1/3 of the factory rent. That sounds fair and reasonable, more appropriate. So instead of using direct labor hours, that's not an appropriate cost driver here. We'll use square footage of facilities. Let's talk about factory utilities. Let's say the electricity bill. Now, if you allocate electricity bill on the basis of direct labor hours, naturally the pens product line, they're going to be getting most of it because they employ more workers. So you got 3, 6, 9 and 12 workers here compared to 4 workers in the bottles product line. Now that would not be fair because the bottles product line seems to be having more number of machines, seems to be running the machines for more number of hours. The pens department, they just have one machine, a lot of workers to assemble, but that does not use electricity. Here, a lot of electricity consumed by this mechanized bottles product line. So what we would say is, instead of using direct labor hours to allocate factory utilities, this does not seem right. We would use number of machine hours. So more the number of hours the machines are running, the more the factory utilities would get allocated to that particular product line. So we'll use number of machine hours. So let's say the factory runs for 8 hours a day. The pens product line, they are using 8 machine hours. It's running for 8 hours. The bottles product line, it's 8 into 4, 32 hours. So naturally, the bottles unit would, let's say, get 80% of the factory utilities and the pens unit would get 20%, assuming all the machines are running for the same number of hours. So that's a good allocation of this overhead using the correct cost driver instead of using a generic single cost driver called direct labor hours. Let's move on. Let's talk about machine setup. Now again, you have, let's say, a common team which does the machine setup for all these molding machines. Now naturally, there will be more number of setups in the bottles product line, less setups in the pens product line because they've just got one machine. The ideal way to allocate the machine setup department's cost would be to look at number of setups that have happened. So let us say the bottles product line, though they have 4 machines, they don't have a lot of changes, they just produce one kind of bottles. Whereas the pens product line, they keep changing the type of pens they produce. So they have more setups possible. So basically what we will say is direct labor hours, that's not the right cost driver here. A better cost driver here would be number of setup, or the number of hours the setup department has used, or setup hours. Now, when we look at machine maintenance, now naturally all these molding machines, they require a lot of maintenance and it's pretty expensive to maintain them. Now, instead of allocating this by using direct labor hours doesn't make sense to me, we would use machine hours. That sounds more appropriate. Let's say we have a common procurement department which takes care of the procurement for the bottles as well as the pens product line. Now we're going to allocate the cost of those purchase managers to both the bottles and the pens product lines. Using direct labor hours to allocate it doesn't make any sense to me. How about we use number of purchase orders issued? So the purchase managers, they're going to issue purchase orders out to the vendors. So number of purchase orders they issue, whether it's for the bottles product line or for the pens product line, we're going to use that number to allocate their cost to the respective product lines. Then let's look at material handling costs. So let us say they've got a separate warehouse out here. So this is the warehouse for bottles unit and this is the warehouse. Let's make the pens warehouse a little bigger. So they're the production department small, they use a lot of work in progress and raw materials. Now, when goods come in, so let's say this is the factory gate here. So I'm just building an entire industrial unit out here. So let's say this is the factory gate out here. So the trucks come in. So this is the truck. Let's say this is the receiving department here. So the goods go into the warehouse. So truck comes in for the bottles unit, puts in the stuff here. Now, then you have a team which takes care of material handling. So whenever production is happening in the bottles unit, the raw materials from here needs to be pushed to the production flow. Whenever production is happening in the pens unit, the raw materials from here needs to be pushed onto the pens flow. When the goods are ready, again, you have trucks coming in, they're going to take the goods out to the sales warehouses. So there's a lot of material handling happening. Now using direct labor hours for material handling, that doesn't sound so good. How about we use the tons of material or kilograms or pounds of material handled to allocate the material handling department costs between the bottles product line and the pens product line? That would be amazing. So we could use tons or kilograms or pounds of material handled. So let's say we're looking at this production warehouse that they have. Now we could allocate the cost of the production warehouse, so you have rents for here, based on the square footage of the warehouse used. Again, similar to what we did for the factory premises. Let's say we got an engineering design department which takes care of research and development, designing new products. So they want to design a new type of pen. The design department would take care of it. They want to design a new kind of bottle. The design department would take care of it. Now we could allocate the cost of those engineers based on the number of design changes that are happening. So the pens, they changed design 4 times during the year. The bottles, they changed it 7 times during the year. So the number of times there were design changes, we're going to use that as a cost driver to allocate the engineer's costs. So number of design changes could be a good cost driver. So guys, as you can understand, what I'm trying to say is, instead of using one single cost driver, let's say direct labor hours, a volume based cost driver, let us use multiple cost driver. Let us use the most appropriate cost driver based on the activity. So these are all the activities that we're looking at, and these are the cost driver. So we have activity based cost drivers, and they are not one, they are multiple cost drivers. So instead of using just one cost driver, we now have multiple cost drivers. So guys, this is activity based costing. So what we are saying here is, instead of using a single cost driver like direct labor hours, we'll use multiple cost drivers based on activity levels, hence the term activity based costing. Now because of the focus on activities, activity based costing could also help us identify and eliminate certain non-value adding activities. So let us say, when I'm looking at these pens, the raw materials that go into manufacturing these pens, the plastic granules, the refills, they are value adding, they add value to the pens. If you don't have a refill in here, it can't write. Let's say you have some direct overheads, so you have some machine maintenance, you have some utilities which goes into molding these pens. That's all value adding. Let's say we have this engineering design department, they come in, they change the design, they make it better. That's again adding value. So these value adding activities, either they create the product or they make the product better. But how about rework cost? So let us say what the assembly department did was, so they had blue pens, they should have put blue lids on the blue pens. Instead of that, they put red lids on here. So it looked like this. So a blue pen having a red lid, can't ship it out to customers. So now there needs to be a rework done on this. So you got to take off the red lids and put in the blue lids. Does this add any value to this pen? So you get all the extra effort in getting the red lids out. So you get the extra effort by the workers getting the red lids out, putting the blue lids in. Did this activity add any value to the pen? No, this is a non-value adding activity. Let us say we're looking at material handling. So there was a lot of movement. So raw materials came in. So raw materials came in for the pens, they came in here, then they moved in from here to the production department. There was a lot of movement till it was produced. Did all this movement, so let's say the pens were ready and they were moved around on the shop floor. It's a messy shop floor here. They were moved around on the shop floor here and there and there. Does that add any value to the pens? Do the pens write better because they were moved 120 feet? No. So material handling in a lot of ways is non-value adding activities. You can't eliminate it, but you certainly want to reduce it. Okay, how about warehousing? So the work in progress, so let's say the plastic granules, the raw materials, or the work in progress, or even after they were finished, they were stored in the warehouse for a pretty long time. Does that storage in warehouses add any value to these pens? Do these pens write better because they were stored for a long time? No, that's a non-value adding activity. Now, the case could be different if we are, let's say, looking at wines, or we're looking at champagne. So for this bottle of champagne, if you store this in a warehouse, it's going to get older, it's going to become vintage, it's going to become more valuable. But for these pens, that is not true. So you could say that storage or warehousing cost is value adding for wines and champagne, but it's a non-value adding activity for these pens. So guys, what activity based costing helps us is, it helps us identify all the activities. So it helps us identify all these activities. Now we got to decide which of them are value adding, which add value to the product, and which of them are useless, junk, non-value adding. And what we will do is, the non-value adding activities, either we'll eliminate it or we'll at least try to reduce it. So let us say, when we are looking at material handling, I said it's non-value adding activity. So the amount of cost allocation that happens for material handling, we'll look into those costs and try to reduce those costs. Let's say we have production warehouse, again that's non-value adding. We'll try to reduce the cost here, because activity based costing would help us separately identify those costs. So guys, that's about activity based costing, which is more contemporary, and naturally, as you can understand, it's pretty much advanced. It helps you to go for activity based management. We'll talk about that. Now let's look at an example that you have on your book, and we'll complete activity based costing. So we'll have a pretty comprehensive example on this. Now this is Harsh Plasto makes two products in their fan factory. Used a traditional cost accounting system for the application of overhead to the products. Currently they use direct labor hours as an application base. So they have a product called ceiling fan. So these fans which run on the ceilings, they've incurred 160,000 direct labor hours. And they have a table fan unit. So fans which run on tables, which incurred 90,000 direct labor hours. They are considering converting to an activity based system. So they're getting better. They want to move from the traditional cost system to an activity based system. Now the estimated data for the year one operations is summarized below. So you have a lot of activity center, and you have cost for each activity center, cost driver, and activity levels for ceiling fan and for table fan. So they want us to do both the traditional system first. Look at how this looks using direct labor hours as a single cost driver, and then we will do our calculations using the activity based costing system, where we'll use multiple cost drivers, relevant cost drivers. So let's do this on the other side of my board. Let me carry my pens along. So all my pens come in from here, from this production unit doing pens. So looking at this example out here. Okay, first let's do this using the traditional system. So you have traditional system here. So example. Now in the traditional cost system, I'm really not concerned about activities. I don't look at activities. I just need the total overhead number. What's the total overhead number? That's $1.5 million. So I'll have total overheads of $1.5 million here. Now we're going to use direct labor hours to allocate the overhead. How much of direct labor hours has been used? So we're looking at total, so this is total overhead, and I'm looking at total direct labor hours. So we can see that the ceiling fan unit, they used 160,000 direct labor hours, and the table fan unit, they used 90,000 direct labor hours. So in total, 250,000 direct labor hours were used. Now we're going to allocate all the overhead cost using the single cost driver, direct labor hours. So how much of overhead do we apply for every direct labor hour? That's simple and easy. So you have overhead being applied $1.5 million for 250,000 hours. So that gives you $6 per hour. So for every hour that the workers put in production, $6 of overhead gets applied. So this becomes your overhead application rate. So now let's look at the two departments that we have here. So we have ceiling fan and we have table fan. Now ceiling fan, these guys, they used 160,000 labor hours. Table fan, they used 90,000 labor hours. Now for every hour of labor that they use, we're going to apply overhead at $6. So this would be into 6 and this would be into 6. So this one becomes $960,000 and this one is $540,000. So if you do 960 plus 540, that's $1.5 million. So that's 1.5 million. We've allocated that between ceiling fan and table fan. Or rather, let me draw an arrow from here. So this is the overhead number that we have allocated between ceiling fan 960 and table fan 540. Now it says ceiling fan, they've produced 100,000 units. And table fan, they've produced 50,000 units. So $960,000 of overhead got applied to 100,000 units of ceiling fan. So every unit of ceiling fan got $9.60 of overhead. Now looking at table fan, $540,000 of overhead got applied on the 50,000 table fan units. So every unit of table fan, every table fan got $10.80 of overhead costs. So this was using the traditional costing system. Let me make this a little more. That's a better shape. So we're looking at the traditional costing system where we apply overhead based on direct labor hours. How many hours did the product line use? Now I said that could not be so good. That's traditional. That's not contemporary. Instead of using one single cost driver, how about we use multiple cost driver based on activities? So now we're going to look at this manufacturing entity, understand its activities, and then allocate overhead not based on a single cost driver but based on activity based cost drivers. So you have 4 activity centers that we have here. You got a material handling activity center, production orders, product redesign, and you got plant utilities. So let's put the numbers in here together. So ABC costing. So you have total overhead of 1.5 million. Now we're going to look at all the activities that were involved in this $1.5 million of overhead. So you had material handling. This was $300,000. Then you had production orders. This was $50,000. You had product redesign. This was $250,000. And then you had plant utilities. This was $900,000. So now what we do is we look at both ceiling fan and table fan, both the units, and try to allocate the overhead cost using activity based cost drivers. So for material handling, a good cost driver could be pounds, the weightage of material which was handled. Now it said, when you're looking at material handling, the ceiling fan department, they handle 30,000 pounds of material. The table fans, they had 10,000 pounds of material. So material handling was $300,000 for 40,000 pounds. So you could say that's $7.50 per pound. So for ceiling fan, where they used, or rather they handled 30,000 pounds, we could have 30,000 pounds into $7.5. Table fan, they used, or rather handled 10,000 pounds into 7.5. So this would be $225,000 and this would be $75,000. So guys, as you can understand, we are not allocating the 1.5 million directly. We're breaking it down into various activities. So we've broken it down into all these activities. And we're saying pounds, we're going to use cost drivers to allocate the cost relevant to these activities. So the $300,000 of cost that you have here for material handling is allocated $225,000 to ceiling fan and $75,000 to table fan. Let's look at the next activity, production orders. So it says we had 250 orders issued. So what we could do is $50,000 we could divide it by 250 orders. So this was 40,000 pounds. So that gives us $200 per order. This was $7.50 per pound. Now we saw the ceiling fan unit, they had 100 orders. So 100 orders into $200 per order. So they're supposed to be getting $20,000 of this production orders overhead costs. Table fan unit, they had 150 orders. Again, $200 per order. So they're going to get $10,000 of this production orders overhead. So if you look at 50,000 of this production order overhead cost, that's allocated. Sorry, they got table fan, they got 30,000. So 150 into 200, that's 30,000. Simple math, missed it out there. So what we're saying is $50,000 of production orders get allocated, 20,000 to ceiling fans and 30,000 to table fans. Then looking at a third activity, product redesign. So what we say here, the right cost driver for that is number of design changes, and there were 100 design changes. So there were 100 changes in design. So for every design change, we're going to allocate $2,500. That's expensive because it's an engineering design change. Engineers, very expensive. So you have $250,000 here, which will get allocated based on the number of design changes. Now we said that ceiling fan, they had only 20 changes, whereas table fan, they had a lot of design changes. So ceiling fan would have 20 changes into 2,500 per change, gives us $50,000. And table fan, they've got 80 changes into 2,500 per change, which gives us $200,000 for them. So what we see here is this $250,000 of product redesign is allocated between ceiling fan 50,000 and table fan 200,000. Now let's look at the fourth activity center here, plant utilities, $900,000. Now we're going to allocate plant utilities using machine hours as our cost driver. So we have 100,000 machine hours being used by ceiling fan product line and 80,000 machine hours being used by table fan product line. So $900,000, that's going to be divided by 180,000 hours. Basically, this calculates to $5 of plant utilities applied for every machine hour, $5 per hour. So you have $900,000 here, which would be allocated between ceiling fan and table fan based on machine hours. So looking at plant utilities, for ceiling fan, we have 100,000 machine hours into $5 per hour. That gives us $500,000 going to ceiling fans. For table fans, you have 80,000 machine hours and we have $5 per hour. That's $400,000 being allocated to table fans. So $900,000 here gets allocated $500,000 for ceiling fan and $400,000 for table fan. Now if we total all this, so you have total overhead applied to ceiling fan is $225,000 plus 20, that's 245, plus 50, that's 295, and plus 500, that's $795,000. Looking at table fan, you have $75,000, $30,000, that's 105, plus 200, that's 305, plus 400, that's $705,000. Now, we saw that ceiling fan, we had 100,000 units manufactured during the year. So, ceiling fan is 100,000 units and table fan, 50,000 units were manufactured. So, the overhead allocation for every unit of ceiling fan is $7.95. So, $7.95 per unit of overhead allocated to ceiling fans. Table fans, you had 50,000 table fans being produced and a total of $705,000 of overheads allocated to table fans. So for every table fan that was produced, we would allocate 705,000 divided by 50,000, calculates to $14.10 per unit. So guys, as you can compare, we looked at traditional cost system here and the ABC costing here. So this is our comparison. Now under the traditional costing system, we saw that for every unit of ceiling fan which was produced, $9.60 of overhead was allocated. Whereas when we did activity based costing, we saw that the allocation for ceiling fan should have been lesser than this. It shouldn't have been $9.60. It should have been $7.95. For table fan here, under the traditional cost system, we allocated $10.80 per unit. But under ABC costing, we saw that table fan units should have received more of the overhead allocation. They would have received $14.10. Here, we simply used one single cost driver. So what was that single cost driver that we used? We used direct labor hours. Single cost driver. That's traditional, that's backward, that's obsolete. Now, contemporary, in the current modern world, we're going to use activity based costing, where we will use multiple cost drivers. So for material handling, the cost driver was pounds. For production orders, the cost driver was number of orders. For product redesign, the cost driver was number of design changes. Sounds more appropriate. For plant utilities, the cost driver was number of machine hours. So guys, as you can understand, we have all these activities and relevant cost drivers for each activity which we use to allocate overhead, activity based costing. On page 26, we're looking at activity based costing. Put a box around ABC costing, highlight multiple cost drivers. Highlight costs are assigned on the basis of the product's consumption of each of the various overhead resources. Next, put a box around traditional cost systems, where we use highlight single cost driver. Highlight costs are assigned on the basis of volume based cost drivers like direct labor hours or machine hours for all overhead resources. Under ABC costing, highlight improves cost allocation, since the overhead cost allocation is based on activity levels. Under traditional cost systems, highlight assigning overhead costs based on volume distorts the costs assigned to various product lines, since all overhead costs do not fluctuate with volume. And on the last row there, under ABC costing, highlight ABC uses both volume based cost drivers like machine hours as well as transaction based cost drivers like number of purchase orders. Moving to page 27, highlight ABC focuses management on cost benefit of activities, and this helps them highlight eliminate the non-value added activities. Highlight value added activities, so these include only production activities which increase the product value. Then highlight non-value added activities. Now these do not increase product value or service and must be targeted for elimination. On the next subbullet, highlight ABM, that's activity based management. Now activity based management integrates ABC with other concepts such as TQM, total quality management, target costing, etc. Therefore, it tries to create a management system which focuses on cost reduction and continuous process improvement. Turn to page 28, where we're looking at a comprehensive example on activity-based costing. Here we're looking at the allocation of total overhead costs of circle $1.5 million. Now under highlight traditional system, we're looking at allocation of total overhead costs using a single cost driver. So highlight total overhead costs, and that's 1.5 million. Then we're looking at total direct labor hours, which is 250,000 hours. And our overhead application rate is total overhead costs divided by the total direct labor hours. So that would be $1.5 million divided by 250,000 direct labor hours leads to $6 per direct labor hour. So highlight per direct labor hour, draw an arrow and write single cost driver. Put a box around ceiling fans and circle $960,000. So ceiling fans, they've used 160,000 direct labor hours, and we're going to apply overhead at $6 per direct labor hour. So that would be $960,000. Next one, put a box around table fans. Now they've used 90,000 direct labor hours. So 90,000 into 6, that gives us circle $540,000. So the total overhead of $1.5 million under the traditional system is allocated $960,000 to ceiling fans and $540,000 to table fans based on a single cost driver, direct labor hours. Next, we're looking at highlight ABC costing system. Now here we're going to break the overhead into various activities. So highlight material handling, production orders, product redesign, and plant utilities. Draw a bracket and on the left write activities. Now we're going to allocate material handling costs between the product lines depending on the pounds or the weight of material handled. So highlight per pound. We're going to allocate production orders by looking at the number of production orders from each product line. So highlight per production order. Product redesign, that's going to be allocated depending on the number of design changes. So highlight per design change. For plant utilities, we're going to use machine hours in each product line. So highlight per machine hour. And on the right hand side, draw a bracket and write multiple cost drivers. So pounds, that's the weight, or number of production orders, number of design changes, machine hours, these are all multiple cost drivers for relevant activities under the activity-based costing system. So put a box around ceiling fan and circle $795,000. Put a box for table fans and circle $705,000. So under activity-based costing, the total overhead cost of $1.5 million is allocated between ceiling fans $795,000 and table fan $705,000.